On today's podcast, we're going to talk about some RPO and how that fits into the run game. We'll take a look at developmental leagues. And we've seen a lot of those in the past. Unfortunately, when COVID hit, those shut down, but how important they are to the game. And finally, stepping out of your comfort zone to develop as a coach and find new opportunities. And joining me to talk about all those things is the former OC and quarterbacks coach at the San Antonio Commanders of the AAF, Matt Troxel. Matt, it's great to have you here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me on. I'm a listener, so I was happy that I was able to join. So love the show.
Well, again, thanks for being here. And like most coaches, there's some kind of a football background, and for you, that was a big part of your start in coaching. You grew up with it with your father as a high school football coach, your grandfather who was coach at Idaho, and then a high school coach in the Northwest. So you have that background that certainly, I think when you grow up with some of that, I was the same way. You're around it all the time. It's just something you gravitate towards doing. But beyond that, Coach, what were some of those things early on that, I guess, developed you as a coach, developed you into the coach that you are today?
So I, ultimately, just growing up, my dad, Van Troxel, 38 years, high school head coach at Lake City High School in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Going to practice every day and just being able to be around him and how you treat players and how you treat the kids and, truly getting them to understand that my dad was a master at getting guys to, play hard and not whether, get them to develop in the weight room, whether they were a football player or not, but just getting kids to believe that you're there for them and want to make them better. So I tried to take that over into into my experience with college football as a player and then as a coach. I started out played at the University of Montana. End of my career, I got hurt and kind of had to figure out, what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to coach. So I started helping out and, Rob Fennessy, was our offensive coordinator there. And, Fenn just had a huge impact on me and how you operate as a coach and how you break down tape and, how you put a scouting report together and just the little things that as I was starting out that I, putting in the extra hours to sort through what to do, how to watch. I remember one of the first times being in the press box with him on a game day, he said, "Hey, you're not a fan here watching. You're watching the coverage. Keep your eyes on the secondary, and that's what you're watching. Don't watch the play, watch the secondary and how they move." And for me, that was just a great tip to get started. From there, I went to the University of Idaho as a grad assistant under head coach Rob Akey, and our offensive coordinator Steve Axman was a longtime veteran in coaching, and I thought really Ax really taught me how to be a professional and how you carry yourself on a day-to-day basis with dealing with conflicts in the office and how to deal with the staff and and keep a good rapport with everybody. I really enjoyed that with him. Another thing I thought was really unique about my experience with Coach Axman, when I got there as a grad assistant, he said, "Hey, you came here not just to coach, you're going to get your master's." And Coach Axman had two different master's degree, and he's also written a ton of books, and he really made that emphasis. He goes, "If anybody tells you you have to do something and you can't go to class, you tell me, because going to class and you're getting your master's and you're going to do everything we need to do football wise, you can get it all done." And I think a lot of times in college football, that piece gets lost. I know a lot of coaches that, are a few credits shorts that maybe wish if they had somebody that said it made that part of it important also. That there's more to this than just working in the office football wise. I do think that's important. I thought that was a huge impact for me early on, is to put family and school and football in perspective also, because we get lost sometimes in the football piece of it.
Those are some really good mentors there. I know Steve Axman through his books, through his videos, and I have several of them on my shelf. Somewhere I have VHS tapes or DVDs from her. I don't even have a DVD player in my house anymore, but Axe is a great resource for everybody before this internet boom and everything being on out there digitally. He really did a great job of explaining the ins and outs of all the things you need to do. Really, I think some of the resources I had was just about being an offensive coordinator. So I'm sure there's a lot of great things you picked up from him.
Totally, and he actually encouraged me. I wrote a book as I was finishing as a GA. Coaching wide receiver play. He encouraged me to write it, and ended up getting it published by Coach's Choice. And what's funny is it was going to start off as just a master's kind of thesis project, is just put together a wide receiver manual and potentially try to get an article published. And Axe, who's written, over 25 books in his career, goes, well, if you're going to write an article, just write 12 of them, and now you've got to get yourself a book and you can get it published. And I was going, well, that's easy for you to say. Actually, you've written 25 books, but
That's right.
I'm 24 years old trying to just finish. And so I wrote it all through a summer with his help, and I would bring in the drafts to him, and he would go through it like with a red pen, just like I was in high school, and just mark it all up. Nope, you don't want to say this. You want to reword this, rethink this part. And I ended up, and he pushed me to go for it and get it published. I'm really happy that I had that support and that he pushed me, because it was something I didn't think I could do,
So you did spend some time then at Idaho State working in a number of different positions, and that really opened up your perspective to the game, helped you understand probably the whole picture of offense and being able to work with all those positions. Talk to us a little bit about, what we said early on, that one of the things we were going to talk about is being able to step outside of your comfort zone and learn new things.
Yeah. So I spent 2 years at Idaho as a GA, and then I took a job with Mike Kramer at Idaho State University. The spring of 2011. It was an unbelievable experience, and Coach Kramer was great to me and really allowed me to grow in all sorts of different ways as a coach, and, entrusted that he felt like I was a good teacher and could figure out the different roles. And so he put me in some positions that I probably wasn't qualified for, but you had to figure it out, because when you get in front of the kids, you got to, they've got to feel the confidence and that what you're doing, and they can believe what you're teaching, what you're all about. So I came from a wide receiver, skill background. I did do 1 year with Dan Finn in the O-line at Idaho as a GA. But I got to Idaho State. I was the tight end coach in 2011. 2012 was able to move, and he let me do the special teams and coach the inside receivers, the slots, and the tight ends. And then the big real jump for me was going into 2013. Our offensive line coach had left, and so I came into Coach Kramer, and I knew the job was available, and I'd had a little bit of a background in it, and I just said, hey, I know I can work well with Don Baylor, our offensive coordinator, and we have a good relationship, and I think I can help make this position better and give him a different perspective on how offensive line play works. And he gave me the job, and we were able to go. It was probably some of the most fun coaching I've had in 3 years. We went from 2012. I think we gave up like 72 sacks, something crazy. To fast forward to 2014, we threw the ball over 500 times and got sacked 14 times. And for me, a lot of it was just being uncomfortable, talking to a lot of different coaches on how to teach technique and how to teach scheme, and then adding some of my, value. I was able to get the tackles to read safety rotation and understand when pressure's coming, when it's not. We were able to, change the slide with the O-line based off safety rotation, not to what was going on in the box, which I thought was, unique, and really developed there. And then from there, after 15, then I was our offensive coordinator left, and he let me be move the quarterbacks and start running the offense, which was fun then to kind of be able to put it all my thoughts together along with Coach Kramer and develop an offense.
So from there, though, you moved from being an offensive coordinator to an offensive quality control assistant at Oregon State. And again, one of those situations where you're making a move, probably stepping out of your comfort zone somewhat. You have, a good position at Idaho State, but you're going to do some new things. And I think when I look at guys who make that move and get into either the analyst or the quality control, you kind of have an opportunity, again, to look at the game in a different way, right? When you're analyzing things and you step back and don't have that primary focus on developing a position, you are able to see the game in some different ways. So for you in filling that role at Oregon State, what were some of the things that really came to the forefront for you as important things in this game, things you need to pay attention to, the detail-oriented part of this?
Yeah, coming from, I'd spent 7 years at Idaho State, 6 with Mike Kramer, then my last year, 2017, with Rob Fennessy as the head coach. And, I felt like I was able to really develop as a coach almost through trial and error, because you're, like we talked about earlier, just you're thrust in the fire where you're in front of those offensive linemen, or now you're calling an offense for the first time, and the kids thought that they have to have confidence that you know what you're doing, whether you probably do or not. And, so I was able to really felt like kind of through, again, trial and error, to develop myself and offensively kind of my philosophy. But I was getting to a point where I really felt like I needed to step away and get around other people and just get more ideas and more thoughts. So Jonathan Smith, he got the job at Oregon State. He was the quarterback coach at Idaho when I was a GA there. So I was able to hook up with Coach Smith, and then Brian Lindgren as the offensive coordinator, who's both those two had a huge impact in just my 1 year there. And I think what was really fun about it, what you're talking about, Keith, is being able to step out, and when you're not having to run the offense on a day-to-day basis, you're not having to, purely be in charge of a group. Are they going to class? Are they not? Here's my recruiting area. All I did was, I was basically Brian's, kind of right-hand man. I'd help him and Kefense Hansen, the receiver coach, game plan. And that was their, the advanced scout. So I would watch third downs and red zone the day before, would come in with, a list of play calls and, say, hey, these are good thoughts I like on third and medium, third and long. And, they were looking for somebody that had called plays before, and not just, somebody that's going to watch the video, but actually offers up ideas and thoughts of what we do. And for me, then on the side, I was able to watch a ton of NFL video, a ton of video from other people around the country that we were studying outside of the Pac-12, and really felt like I was able to gain and really grow my knowledge just through being exposed to more ideas and different ways of doing it. At one point when we were putting in a new offense, we're sitting in the room, and it's me and Brian and Mike Riley, Coach Riley. That's where I met him, and had come in, and Coach Riley's sitting there, and Jonathan. So we're talking about just, how do you want to put an offense together? And for me, I was just so lucky to be around these great offensive minds, and, just being in that position to be exposed to more knowledge and more people in different ways of doing it. And, Coach Riley would say, hey, well, when I was the OC at USC in '94, this is what we did, and we go, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense, and so just being able to see different ways to do things was huge for me. And I think sometimes, guys, you have to not be afraid to be, again, get yourself comfortable being uncomfortable, and, get out of your world and expose yourself to new ways of doing things, because there's a million ways to do stuff in football.
Well, one of those new ways of doing things was what the Alliance of American Football came up with, a developmental league that you moved on and became the offensive coordinator at San Antonio, the San Antonio Commanders under head coach Mike Riley, and some different parameters there as far as how the game's going to operate. For me, just thinking back to that obvious things like the limited special teams, but then other things that got to be a little bit more complex. I'm sure some things that the officials had to deal with and learn to do was the box and who could blitz, and how those things were limited really to, I wouldn't say necessarily to give the offense an advantage, but to allow those offensive linemen to be in a league where they could develop and focus on some different skills before they they got to some of the crazy things that all those defensive coordinators know how to do. So just looking at that league overall for you, how did that help you in the way that you looked at the game?
Yeah, it was so much fun. It lasted about 4 months. I was in San Antonio from, first week in December through, mid-April. But just from an overall coaching standpoint and dealing with the kids, I mean, it was probably the most fun I've ever had coaching, and just being around such a great group of players and coaches with Coach Riley, Jim Grobe, just some great guys. But really, when you look at the scheme part of it, we had such a limited window that we really had to be tight with what we were going to install. And I remember our first coaches meeting offensively, Coach Riley saying, hey, if we install something today for minicamp, I want it to be what we call in that first game in February. So really think, how you're going to teach this, and everything that goes in has to fit into what you're going to develop in the season. And, because I don't want to be 2-3 weeks into the season and we're drawing stuff in the dirt because we didn't get the right stuff installed initially. And then thinking about those blitz rules, initially we were thinking protection wise, okay, we can simplify this. We can give the back, give him one, give the O-line, the other two of the backers, and we can get the back out into some of our stuff faster, and, the O-line not having to deal with, complex pressure packages, anything like that. But as the season went, what would happen is the refs, some of them weren't, they weren't used to calling in the game that way. And so they might miss a call where, I remember specifically, I think it was the Orlando Apollos, they brought 6, and, and we were watching them getting ready to play them, and they, knocked the Memphis quarterback out, and the refs missed the call, or even if they flagged it later, we're going, well, yeah, but that guy still hit our quarterback. And so we ended up kind of changing from keeping it, just keeping the protection rules pretty standard and pretty normal, just to guard against, because people would end up bringing a pressure that, you weren't, yes, it was illegal, but they still could bring. The other thing we saw, just in general, though, you saw less pressure, but the other thing too that we found out is that the defensive linemen, we felt like were a little ahead of the offensive linemen. And so there was certain guys like DeMontre Moore for San Diego that nobody could block in the league as a defensive lineman, as a defensive end. And so still, even though they're bringing less people, we had to think critically with how we're going to protect. And, are we going to be in a 6-man protection? Are we going to be in a 7-man and chip the back out, or line a tight end up over the top of him and try to chip his way out to help that tackle? How are we going to do those things? And so you still kind of went through a lot of the same issues protection-wise that you normally went through. You just didn't have to worry about the amount of different looks. So,
for you, looking back at that league and again, the variations in the rules, I guess, what was one of your favorites in terms of something that's different from, typical NFL, college, even high school rules?
Well, just the length of the games were, without the TV timeouts were shorter. The game typically was done in about 3 hours. And, compare that to a college football game on Saturday where all of a sudden you're getting 4.5, 5 hours. It's a long time to be out there. The play clock was shorter, so the in and out of plays was quicker. We really enjoyed that piece of it, just how the speed of the game, how it went faster. As an offense guy, I loved not having kickoff and kick return. You did the coin flip, and however it sorted out, we got the ball on the 25-yard line, and I could pick the hash, or vice versa. I thought that was a fun way to start the game. It was, all right, here we go, let's just play. And that also with limited roster, with us carrying, 53 guys on the active. I think we had 5 as the kind of practice squad. Your time's so limited, your bodies, you don't want to wear them out. So not having to practice kickoff coverage, kick return was awesome. Just being able to increase what other stuff that we could get done during a limited amount of time with limited bodies. And I really liked that there was no extra points, that everything was a 2-point conversion. It was fun for as a play caller, and it made us kind of rethink our plan, early in the week instead of, a lot of times in college football, at least for me, it's been the, more Wednesday, Thursday, later in the week is your red zone and then your goal line, and you might practice, you're practicing your one, maybe 2-point plays. For us, we would have to get that in at the start of the week, and we would start, the first, like a Tuesday practice in the, with a 2-point play, and we'd run three or four of them and have those game planned and ready early in the week because they were so important.
You're looking at developmental leagues, and right now, I believe the XFL plans on coming back. I don't know that they see themselves necessarily as a developmental league, but it is that spring league for those guys who don't make it to the NFL. How important do you feel those leagues are to our game moving forward?
I think, if they can figure out how to make it work money-wise and get somebody to trust that it's, give it more than a year and give it time to grow, it's so needed, especially with the quarterback play. Our quarterback, for example, our starter, Logan Woodside, played at Toledo, was a 7th-round pick and got cut by the Bengals, ended up with us, played, and everybody's telling him, hey, you need more game film, you need more reps. And you're going, well, I'm not getting, how do you get reps? Well, you got to go play. And so for Logan, he was able to come to us, start 6 games, play really well, get back, got hooked up with the Tennessee Titans, was on their practice squad going into 19, and then was the backup for Tannehill this year in 20, and he's making a career. And it's the same quarterback for the Arizona team, John Wolford. I mean, he was the backup for the Rams. I think Garrett Gilbert from Orlando was, ended up as the backup for the Cowboys. That I know the XFL guy, Taylor Heineke, had a great playoff game and was the starter for the St. Louis team. And so you can see, I mean, there's so many stories of guys like that need that, and they just need reps. Another great example for us was Greg Ward, quarterback at Houston, almost led him to the Cotton Bowl, but had never played receiver. And so he gets to the Eagles, and, he just needs reps of running routes and catching the ball and game reps doing that. And, you just don't have time to do that at the next level. So for us, he had a great 6 games and, played his butt off and worked hard every day. And now he's going on, just signed another contract with them. And, there's a million stories of guys like that out of our league that just need to play more. And there is there's not everybody's ready, right, to go from college football to playing on Sundays. And, but there is some hope for guys to develop and grow. And I just think, it just makes so much sense to have that minor league developmental system that a guy can go play and get game reps and have a chance to make a career out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I know all of us who just love watching the game and having more football would like to see more of that moving forward. Coach, flipping to the X and O side for you, RPOs, something that you love to do. Talk to us about how does the RPO for you fit into the run game?
Yeah, for me, it's been a huge part of what I've done offensively and just kind of how I feel about offensive football. We made the decision at Idaho State kind of going into 2014 that we were going to attach every run play. We were not going to run a run play without a throw, an RPO option to it. And when I really think about RPOs, I don't think about throwing a bubble screen or a quick screen out. I think about throwing quick game down the field or a sling, a 5-step post, that type of stuff. It's second, third level RPOs. To me, that's what it is really about. And what I really liked about it is, on paper, I would, you're running zone and you've got the bubble attached to it. The ball snap, the backer stepping up into the box. We've got numbers on the perimeter. You throw the bubble out, the wide receiver misses his block, and you get hit for -3. And that always really bothered me. And in my thought, it's like, okay, if I can do the same thing, but now maybe I can run an out with the slot, and if the quarterback can throw it and that guy can catch it, at least I can guarantee myself 4 yards, which is the same as an efficient run, in my thoughts. And so how can I develop a system to work in all my quick passing game with the run action. And we were able to develop over, kind of a couple of years there at Idaho State, giving the Q the ability to make checks based off coverage and leverage that could get us into the right quick game to attach to our run game. And then it just came our system of that's what we practiced every day. And I think about my dad growing up, he was a split back veer guy, and we would start veer drill quarterbacks, the pitch guys and the running backs in February, and everybody knew exactly, how that running back's track was going to go, the relationship between the Q and the pitch back, being we were 7 yards apart with 1 yard of depth as the pitch back in. And I tried to kind of take that same thinking of training those RPO quarterbacks like he's an option quarterback. And then putting in the thought of, this is our system and we have our system of checks that we use all the time, but you've got to train guys to do it all the time. And I think too many times what happens with RPOs is guys, they want to run it because they want it to be a piece of it, but maybe the program doesn't, the head coach doesn't completely believe in it, or the program's not, there's not all in with it. And I think if you're going to do it, you've got to live with the fact that the quarterback is going to hand the ball when he should have thrown it, and he's going to throw it sometimes when you wish you had it blocked well, but his rule's telling him to throw it. And you've got to be okay with that. And you've got to live. You can't beat up the quarterback for when he was right, when he was wrong. You've got to teach him why and explain to him the parameters and what the thought process is, and live, just like, again, growing up as a son of a veer guy, it's, hey, and I teach the Qs this, sometimes you're going to, early in the game, you might be looking at your key and you're given, and then now we're throwing. And when we do throw, it's a big play, or we're starting out on the other side and it's throw, and then we're getting that defense into a too high shell, and now we're giving it, and being able to let him, rep through it enough to get through all the different looks and control what the defense is doing a little bit.
When you look at that aspect of that quarterback development for you, what were some of the key tools that you would use to refine that mental process to make sure that you're getting more of those correct decisions than you're not, even though they may happen at sometimes? And again, tools, whether those are individual drills, group drills, classroom time, walkthroughs, etc. What things did you feel worked best in helping develop those guys in the RPO game?
Yeah, I would say it's a mixture of what you just said. It's a ton of time together in the classroom, getting them to understand opponent defense in coverage and what the defense is trying to take away, when we're in certain formations, and them also having an understanding of how we're blocking the scheme. How many guys, at a bare minimum, the Q need to know how many guys we're blocking with and who is he controlling. So if we're blocking with 6 with the offensive line and the tight end, well, now you're responsible for number 7 to the box, however that appears within our scheme. We might be in 12 and we're blocking with 7. Well, okay, who's our 8th defender and how are we going to, put him in conflict? And the Q having a great understanding of opponent defense, and that happens in the classroom. And then being able to walk through and being on the same page with the receivers. So when we would line up to do like routes on air every day, it would be me and maybe another coach, Mike Fairder, Coach Fennessy, and we're showing different looks of leverage that we're going to see, out of cover 1, out of cover 3, and the Q working through all those different checks with the receivers. So then the receivers get good. They start seeing the leverage we're looking for, and they know exactly what the check's going to be. So it's not a surprise to them and repping through those looks. And then it's obviously to practice the team time of giving them enough, as an offense, maybe not carrying so much offensively that you can't get your RPO run game repped enough. I think sometimes if we get too many, you get too many schemes and too many things, then you get real average and everything, instead of just, hey, let's get really great at a couple core concepts and how of our run, our RPOs fit with that, and then build from there. And it might be a couple-year process.
Coach, jumping ahead to where you're at now, and it's one of those things for all of us, there's been transitions because of all the things we went through with things being shut down, etc. A bit of a transition for you and working for a company now called Vertical Raise. What do you do now, and what's the thing that company does that can help football coaches out there?
Yeah, so I work for a company called Vertical Raise, and we help teams and groups, high schools, nonprofits raise money across the country. For me, it's been an interesting transition because initially I felt like as the AAF ended and then kind of COVID hit and I wasn't able to land any college coaching job yet. And, I started and I had long conversations with my wife of going, well, I know how to teach inside zone. I know how to teach four verts, but how do those apply to the real world? And when you really get going and, do dive into something else, you start realizing, okay, well, recruiting and talking to all the kids and go and talk to coaches, that's no different than sales. And, and for me, you start seeing your, different skills that you've worked on over your career. You just applied it towards football. Now I can apply it towards a different way. And so I'm able to help, I help kind of as a sales coach with all of our new hires across the country and help them get their territory going and overcome different objections to the sales process. But it's been really fun and rewarding just to, kind of take some of my coaching background and skills and apply it in a different way. And also just for guys just to realize that there is other opportunities out there. And, one thing I really enjoy about my job is I control my own time, and I have more time for my family, more time with my wife, more time to pick up other hobbies other than football. And, that part of it is hard to, you can't put a value on that because your time's short anyway. But also just a company like ours, we love to hire ex-athletes and coaches and, it's been fun to connect. We probably have about 15 different ex-college coaches working for us and, just telling different stories and connecting about people I know and they know and getting guys to understand, yeah, you do have more skills than just being a football coach, that stuff applies to a ton in the business world also.
Coach, when you look at everything you do, whether that's with your guys on the field or those sales guys you're training now, but you get down to it, what's the one thing that really gives your players the winning edge?
I think when it really gets down to it is it's about preparation. It's about attention to detail, and it's about getting guys to, like to say, get yourself comfortable being uncomfortable and putting yourself in a new position and not being afraid to fail. Because when you do fail, I think as a coach or a guy doesn't do something the way, well, was it an effort issue or was it a technique issue? And I can help with the technique issue, but maybe the effort issue, that's on the player we got to work on. But it's really getting guys to build confidence in what they're doing and not be afraid to fail. And when they do, knowing that you as the coach or me, if I'm working with a new sales rep and maybe wasn't able to close the sale, that, hey, let's look at it analytically, why that, logically, why didn't that work? And what were the reasons? Let's fix those and get you back out there and not be afraid to go do it again.
Coach, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, whether that's to talk some ball, talk some RPO, or learn more about how Vertical Raise can help their program?
You can just search, if you search Matt Troxel on Twitter, you could send me a direct message. I'd love to visit with anybody on there. I think it's mtrox or Coach Trox 11 is my Twitter handle. But that'd be a great way to connect. And anybody out there that wants to talk ball or interested in trying to find other opportunities, please reach out.
Coach, again, thank you for taking the time. It was great to have you here, and I look forward to seeing what you do in the future, whether that's continuing to work in the space you're in or getting back into the game.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Please, if you are enjoying the podcast, head over to iTunes or Spotify and click 5-star for rate. If you have a minute, write a review. It really helps the podcast. Check out our new home for the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. That's at coachandcoordinator.com. And follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.